Back we come on Frogs today. Thanks for joining us again here in the Flying T Club studios. Time for our Frogs feed, as we like to say it. We go live around the country, sometimes around the world, as in Madrid, Spain last week with Cam Norrie. This week, though, we just go across 360 to Dallas, where our friend Commissioner Bowlsby is with us right now. The Big 12 commissioner, kind enough to carve out some time for us. Commissioner Bowlsby, good to see your face. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Brian, it's always good to be with you. I always do whatever you ask me.
You are very kind. That is very true, and I'm going to miss that about you. I'll be honest with you, and I say miss because you announced a while back that it was time for you to step down as Big 12 commissioner. Give us some sense as to what led to that decision.
Well, I don't know that I had any sort of epiphany one morning that it was just time, but I'm 70 years old and I've got a little time left on my contract, and yet as I look at the landscape, it's probably not likely that some of the problems we have with NIL and with the transfer portal and with some of the lawsuits and the like, that I'm actually going to be able to stay around long enough to make a meaningful impact on those things. And, part of the reason I left campus and came to the conference office was because I felt like there was an opportunity to help with the things that were good about college athletics and make some of the things that weren't as good as they needed to be better. And I've had that opportunity, had the opportunity to lead nationally. But, as I've gotten a little older and thought about it, you don't quit in the middle of a pandemic, and you don't quit in the middle of two of your primary members leaving. So, there just hasn't been an obvious off ramp in the last 2 or 3 years, and it just felt like it was the right time to give somebody with a little longer runway the opportunity to get their arms around the challenges. And I told our board I'll be happy to stay and onboard the new people and offload OU in Texas whenever. I'd be happy to do the TV negotiation if you want me to, but I'm also willing to get out of the way and move on if you feel like a longer runway makes some sense. And so, it was very much a collaborative process, and the board has been great to me, of course, including Chancellor Bashini. He's been wonderful during the entire time I've been with the Big 12. And so, I just thought the time was right. And you've been around this a long time, as I have. The hardly anybody gets out on their own terms, and I feel like I have come as close to that as possible.
Well, you talk about having an impact on collegiate athletics and everything that it's facing right now. You've had an impact over the years. You've had a major impact at the Big 12. Obviously, TCU has benefited from that. But those challenges facing athletics right now that you ran through, the NIL, the transfer portal, those sorts of things, compliance and legislation. Commissioner, do you think we're at a point where we can get these fixed? Will they be fixed in the future, or do we see college athletics changing before our eyes and never looking the same?
Well, I think the answer is both, Brian. I think college athletics is changing. I think NIL is a big change, but it's one that was likely overdue. But it was never intended to be an inducement as to where you go to school or where you might transfer. And so, the absence of guardrails has made it a lot more difficult than it needs to be. And we are almost to the point of free agency relative to the transfer portal. We're going to get a little more structure around that, and I think it'll tend towards the mean eventually. In the sport of football, about 40% of the kids in the transfer portal are walk-ons, and so they're looking for a scholarship, didn't have a scholarship. The other 60%, about half of them are getting a new scholarship, and about half of them walk away from a scholarship and not getting another one. So, over time, I think there'll be a leavening effect there. I think we'll end up with some transfer windows that keep it from being an all year round deal. Athletics has proven to be very resilient over a long period of time. And we will find a new normal, but on Saturday, you'll see you'll see football games being played, and throughout the winter, you'll see basketball games being played, and it won't look very much different. But we are in a period of change. There's no doubt about that. Some of the change is difficult, but it's a resilient enterprise, and we will find a new normal that allows us to continue to move forward.
Other than adding TCU, what will go down as one of your greatest achievements in the tenure at the Big 12?
Well, while I happened to be in charge when TCU and West Virginia came on board, I didn't actually add them. They were added before I got here, and so I can take credit, I guess, or
Yes.
blame for the we have coming in, but I can't take credit for TCU. And the Horned Frogs have been a great addition to the league. I mean, it's been very fun for me to be able to just jump in the car and go over to events at TCU, and obviously I get there and Baylor more often than I do most other places, just because it's easier transportation. But I'm very fond of the campus, and Chris and Jeremiah have done a great job with facilities at TCU. It's a really great place with lots of wonderful people, and I just have become very fond of TCU, and frankly, didn't know a whole lot about the history and the prominence of the university until I came to the Big 12. So that's been a very pleasant thing, and TCU has been a terrific member of our league.
I think I know the answer to this because you and I have talked about it before. And that 2 year stretch of COVID, and I remember that March day when we were in Kansas City and we ran into each other at the Big 12 tournament after you had to make that tough decision. Was that the toughest time in your tenure? Is that the most difficult period for you? Does anything else even compare?
Well, I don't know. It might be the thing that I was least prepared to deal with in my career. And I think probably a lot of us felt that way. It was a lot more than just deciding we weren't going to play those games on that Thursday morning. I mean, we were doing conference calls, and we were talking to health department officials, and there were all kinds of rumors flying around, and airlines were shutting down, and transportation was shutting down. And I'll never forget walking towards the press conference at T-Mobile, then Sprint, and having to tell the kids that were already on the floor warming up for the 11 o'clock game that they weren't going to be able to play. And both the teams that were involved needed some wins in order to get into the NCAA tournament. So, they had tears in their eyes because they thought they had lost their opportunity to get in the NCAA tournament. Little did they know that the NCAA tournament was going to get canceled as well. So, I would have to say I was patently unprepared to deal with a pandemic, except that I think probably a lot of the things I've dealt with over the years have caused me to trust my judgment and to rely on people around me and the like. And I think what we learned from it, and you and I have discussed this before, I think we learned that you don't make decisions very far ahead of time. You listen to professionals in the field, and to, in this case, to doctors and epidemiologists and immunologists, but you also make small corrections. You'll remember, as I do, that on August 15th of the year that the pandemic started, we didn't know if we were going to be playing football games 2 weeks later.
Right.
And that's pretty surreal when you know that every university is reliant upon those gate receipts and that TV money for their livelihoods. And the trickle down effect of having to shut down in its entirety was going to be catastrophic for our members, and yet we couldn't do anything that was going to endanger people. And so our first priority was that people were safe and that they were getting proper medical care and they were protected from the virus as much as we possibly could.
Commissioner, there have always been 4 or 5 words that I've had in mind to describe you. I'll be honest with you, and that is, I've always found you to be approachable and candid. I've found you to be trustworthy, But to me, the best description is I've always found you to be first class, and I want to wish you the best in the future. I want to thank you for hopping on Frogs today with us here today via the Frogs feed, and again, we wish you the best of luck, and we hope we see you down the road that you still show up on campus periodically.
Well, I appreciate those very kind words, Brian, and I've appreciated our relationship very much. I think you're a top journalist, and I really have enjoyed listening to you and watching you, and thank you for that. You've given me great access too, and I'm grateful for it. And I'll be around. We're likely going to stay in Dallas. We have
Good.
two of our children here and six of our grandchildren. So I'll probably be darkening your door from time to time.
I look forward to that. Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlsby joining us here on Frogs Today.